These strobes are typically helmet mounted. All right, let me figure out exactly what I'm going to say and in what sequence. Hey guys, Augie from TNVC. I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about the CORE Survival HEL-STAR 6 IFF strobe. Now, what the HEL-STAR 6 is it's what's referred to as an IFF device, which stands for Identification Friend Foe. Basically, it's just a helmet-mounted strobe. It's got both visible and IR functions. There are two basic models of the HEL-STAR 6. You've got this, which is the HELSTAR 6 640, which has this movable nose switch. So you see all the way forward. It's in its visible modes. And then if I push that nose switch to the rear, it's also got IR mode. These strobes are designed to be able to be seen from the air at distances of over 3 nautical miles. So they're obviously very useful for military and law enforcement personnel if you're working in teams stretched over long distances of terrain, or you have some sort of air support, to be able to be identified on the ground to essentially prevent any kind of fratricide incidents, or to just be able to identify formations on the ground. That being said, there are some enthusiast applications for them, non-law enforcement or military applications. In that, if you are hiking around in the woods or something like that, it's always good to have some sort of strobe, whether it's the HELSTAR, whether it's something like this, the HELSTAR 6, or some other kind of visible strobe, because ultimately when you're walking around with night vision, there is always the potential for injury, and the last thing that you want to do is to fall down the side of a mountain, break your legs, and be sitting there. Nobody knows where you are. Nobody can find you. Having something like the HELSTAR 6 allows rescuers, searchers to be able to find you more easily, and once again, both from the air or from the ground. We've got the fairly intense studio lighting right now, so you can't really tell as much how intense the flashes of these are. But at night in the dark, this is going to be visible a long distance away. So again, this is the HELSTAR 6 640, which has this movable nose switch. That's my preferred version. There is also the 620 version, which requires a tool to move the nose switch from visible to IR. Again, for me, I prefer the ability to change that on the fly. I just always know that if it's pointing forward, I'm on visible mode. If it's pointing to the rear, I'm on IR mode. But for certain covert military applications or something like that, you may prefer to have the 620, which requires that tool to switch over to prevent any kind of visible accidental discharge where you're shining your visible strobe when you're trying to remain covert. Now, there have been several variations of the HELSTAR 6 over the years. HELSTAR 6 has been in production for quite a while, and it's been being used by the military for well over a decade at this point in time. So there's a lot of different versions of it. First of all, each type of HELSTAR 6 has a whole series of different types of settings. So for example, something like this is the HELSTAR 6 640-07, and it's got a green steady with white flash. It's got an IR dim flash and an IR bright plus flash. So there's, there's bright settings, there's bright plus settings, there's steady settings. Some versions you can have blue LEDs versus green LEDs, or in addition to green LEDs, or you can have red LEDs, and many of them are also programmable. So if you have the programming interface module, which is available, you can switch out within reason the settings between some of these different HEL-STAR 6s. I have a couple of different preferred versions depending on what the application is. Obviously, the 64007 is one of the ones that I like, and that's because it's got the IR flash dim setting as well as the IR flash bright plus. So that dim setting, again, you can't really see it. You can't really see it with the studio lighting, but if you were looking at this under IR, under NVGs, like I said, that bright plus setting can be seen from the air at 5 nautical miles. So you're talking about an extremely bright flash. So if you are if you are close to other people on the ground, it's probably going to be very distracting. It's going to be very annoying, and it's going to wash out everybody else's nods if you're with some sort of team, if you're with a team. So the IR dim setting makes it a lot easier if you want to have some kind of ground-to-ground identification versus identification from the air. Another version that I like is the 640-56P, which is the LE tactical model, and that one's actually got a green LED and a red LED in the visible mode, and then it's also got the IR dim and the IR and the standard IR flash. So again, I really like having the dim setting, but there's any number of different models. There are rescue models, and then there's also this one here, which is the HEL-STAR 6 lead jumper, which has got a bright plus flash to it in both the IR and the visible mode. So there's you can get extremely bright with these. There have been a lot of, there have been a couple of variations of the HEL-STAR 6 over the years. So another thing that I have here is I've got kind of a couple of variations that have existed of the HEL-STAR 6 over the years. So this is the oldest version of the HEL-STAR 6 that I have. This is actually technically known as the HEL-STAR 6 Gen 2. So a lot of people know it as the Gen 1 housing, but if you talk to Core Survival, if they say there is in fact an older version that existed in prototype form that was first used that is different than the HEL-STAR 6 Gen 2. I hadn't been able to get too many more details on the Gen 1, but the Gen 2 is fairly common out there. The next version, probably still the most common version, is what's known as the HEL-STAR 6 Gen 3. So if you look at it, you can see that it's got a slightly different profile. It's got a lot more ridges to it, and it just kind of gives you a little bit of a cleaner flash from the omnidirectional LEDs in there. You can tell that they are fairly different visually. And again, the HEL-STAR, the Gen 3 HEL-STAR 6 is probably still going to be the most common one that you're going to find there out in the commercial market. Now, within the last year or two, Core Survival has also released the HEL-STAR 6 Gen 3 Plus. So it's not the Gen 4. So the Gen 3 Plus kind of almost looks like a mix of the Gen 2 and the Gen 3. It's a lot smoother, but it still has a lot of the same patterning in it. And again, they've increased the surface area and they've kind of improved this lens cover to give you a little bit cleaner, a little bit brighter, a little bit more efficient strobe effect off of the device. So obviously now the HEL-STAR 6 Gen 2 and Gen 3 are now out of production, but the HEL-STAR 6 Gen 3 Plus is what we currently have available and in stock at TNVC.com. Thanks for watching.